Hello, and welcome to our Summer 2023 Tufts Engineering and Coding Pre-College Programs Live Q&A. I'm Lauren Barry, Associate Director of Tufts University Pre-College Programs, and along with my colleagues, we're excited to take you through tonight's overview of some of our summer programs. We hope tonight's session will help you learn more about our academically challenging and uniquely rewarding summer programs, including Engineering Design Lab, Engineering Investigations, and Coding Academy. Not only do we have a lot of great information for you tonight, but we're also looking forward to letting you drive the second half of the session by asking questions of our team members. As we talk through each of the programs tonight, please feel free to enter any questions in the Q&A section, and we'll keep track and make sure we answer all of your questions following the overviews. With that, let's get started and meet the rest of the team for tonight's session.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Gracia. I'm one of the pre-college program administrators. It's nice to meet you all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Tiano. I'm also a program administrator here at Tufts Pre-College Programs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Tarian, and I'm also a program administrator at Pre-College Programs at Tufts.
Perfect. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Ethan Danahy. I'm a professor here at Tufts University. I sometimes go by Dr. E. There's the Dr. E logo in the background. I'm an engineering professor. I teach some of our first year courses here at Tufts in robotics and computation. And I'm happy to be part of this pre-college program as well. I've been part of it for a number of years now, having run several of the different programs. And I'll be speaking about both Engineering Design Lab and Engineering Investigations.
Hi again. My name is Claire, and I'll be presenting for the pre-college program Coding Academy, since our program lead wasn't able to make it tonight.
For tonight's agenda, the leads for each program will provide an overview of the program itself. We'll then walk you through the application process and end with a live Q&A. Please put any questions you have in the Q&A feature, and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion at the end. First up is our Engineering Design Lab program. Take it away, Dr. E.
All right, excellent. So I was when we first started this program in 2019, I want to say, I was the instructor of this and helped design the curriculum as it first kicked off, and then have since transferred it over to two of our other professors here at Tufts, Dr. Jennifer Cross, who did her PhD at Carnegie Mellon University studying robotics and now is a professor here at Tufts, and Brandon Stafford, who did some research at Stanford in robotics, and then runs our makerspace, our on-campus makerspace. He's director of that, as well as teaching some mechanical engineering classes. So Brandon and Jen are the two that are the instructors for Engineering Design Lab. Really, the goal of Engineering Design Lab is to expose you to engineering and engineering design process and get you doing some projects, and to do that in the context of robotics and programming is the main two things that we do. So we'll certainly do some mini projects that are outside the scope of just robotics and programming. For instance, we go into the makerspace, which you can see in that picture there. We do some 3D printing, some laser cutting, some woodworking, other skills like that around just general making and doing engineering design. And then specifically, we start to get into the ideas of robotics. The Engineering Design Lab starts at scratch, so we don't assume any prior knowledge in this, right? This is intended for high school students who are coming in and trying to explore these ideas. We also recognize simultaneously that there might be students that have prior experience, that have done some Lego robotics in middle school, or might be part of a FIRST team or things like that. So we do accommodate both sort of perspectives. In order to do that, we have some self-directed activities that allow you to take it at whatever pace you're sort of at based on your prior experience. And we have some intro concepts as well as some more advanced ones. The way we've structured it is that we spend the first sort of week of the session going over robotics, thinking about what it means to do robots, the sort of sense, think, act paradigm of robotics, as well as an introduction to Python, because that's the language that we'll use to actually program the robots. Once those skills have been developed in the second week, we then are able to tap into some higher level concepts in robotics, such as more control theory, and doing image processing. We touch on some machine learning and artificial intelligence, as well as, connecting our robots to the internet and being able to sort of use them as an Internet of Things device. So it really spans a pretty wide range, especially for a 2-week program. But we've now that we've run it several years, we have a pretty good handle on what the students coming in are capable of. And the beauty of these intensive pre-college programs is that you're on campus and doing academics for these huge chunks of time during the day, where we're able to cover a lot. As towards the end of the second week, we believe strongly in sort of project-based learning. And so we take lots of our little projects and then transition them into a much larger group project where the students themselves are internally motivated, come up with their own ideas, and drive that towards a final project by the end of the second week. And so they use all of the skills and knowledge and materials that they had been working with over the first week and a half-ish to then create a final project towards the end. And those really range all over the map every year, because we leave it up to the students to sort of pick what they're motivated by, form groups, and solve real-world problems in that way. In addition to the sort of academic part and the sort of class activities that I've been describing, we also have daily seminars. So right after lunch typically is when we've been holding them. We'll invite in both people from industry as well as from academia to give you a sense of sort of what are the future options post-college. So we'll have people from either small startups or sort of larger established companies come in, talk about what they do on a daily basis, how they got to where they are, what skills and knowledge that they use in their jobs. And then we'll also have researchers from Tufts come in and present about their research. So you can sort of see what's happening in some of the academic labs here on campus. I think that covers a bunch. Lauren, anything else you think I should touch on that one?
No, I think we had a couple of questions about the final projects. So you kind of mentioned that a bit, but if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. So I again, we do allow the students a fair amount of flexibility in terms of choosing that. We know how to do our job, so we're also good at sort of redirecting students to what projects that we think will be most fruitful and beneficial, as well as doable within a short time frame, because we only have a couple days there in order to accomplish it. One of the things that we encourage students to do is to think about clients, right? So when you have a context or a client that you're trying to solve a problem for, that really drives your sort of creativity and innovation in terms of your engineering. And so some of the projects that I've seen have really tapped into that. Who is my client and what am I trying to solve a problem about? So for instance, with this robotics one, we saw one where they took a walking cane and actually augmented it with the robotics parts to put on sensors to detect objects in the area, as well as feedback motors to alert you if you're about to walk into something. So this was a product for the blind or those who are hard of can't see, that they're able to sort of still navigate in loud environments by using sensors and motors to sort of alert them where they're going. We've seen other ones that they've taken some of the electronic parts and put it into an airplane and tried to actually create a remote controlled airplane sort of flying around. Again, going back into the makerspace and manufacturing some of the parts out of the laser cutter and 3D printer and things like that. And so really that's this wide range of different things. Again, they tap into all those skills that they've learned during the week, such as image processing and actuation and creating these sort of interactive experiences out of the things. This program is more recent. We've been hosting it, I think, the last 3 years now. And so I've taught it last summer and I'll be teaching it again this summer. This is the one that I run, the engineering investigations. So while the previous one is sort of targeting towards this sort of robotics and programming side, engineering investigations is really trying to give a breadth look at engineering as a discipline. And so, of course, within engineering, there's so many different types of subdisciplines. And so we want to try to hit on a lot of those and give students exposure to those ideas and those experiences, especially if you're sort of trying to figure out, is engineering for me? What is engineering? And is engineering something that I want to sort of pursue in the future? So we want to give that experience experiential experience during the summer program in order to sort of help you understand that better and make those kinds of decisions. And so what we've done is over those, again, it's a 2-week program. We have a whole series of different activities that touch on many different types of engineering. So we start off just purely with engineering design and the engineering design process and trying to understand what it means to iterate and to brainstorm and to reflect and to present your ideas. We have everything we do is a lot of group work. So it's about also learning some of those engineering skills like communication and collaboration in context of the engineering disciplines. Every year we tweak the set of activities a little bit based on lab availability, materials, and some of the other things happening internally here at Tufts. But I can certainly speak to, as an example, some of the things that we did last year. So we touched on biological engineering, and we actually created these automated plant watering systems. And what was neat is because we have about 40 students in the entire class, that meant I had 40 examples of little plant watering systems. And we could actually use this as a class-wide experiment to sort of vary different parameters of how often does different plant watering systems turn on and off, and how does that affect growth of the plants themselves. We were using a feedback loop where it would actually measure soil moisture and then use that to drive a little pump. We did some accessibility engineering where we actually looked at the architecture around Tufts and the campus and the community, and actually did an analytical design and redesign of the urban infrastructure to sort of understand how accessible it is and how it can accommodate different people. We did a biological or a bioelectricity experiment where we actually were measuring both heart rate, and we measured skin conductivity, which changes as you flex your muscles, and actually trying to read that in, measure it, and analyze it, and then react to it. One of the most popular ones was we went into we have a motion capture lab here at Tufts, and we actually did some motion capture, basically the X, Y, Z, and yaw pitch roll of a flying object. We had these big foam airplanes that we were flying in the motion capture lab, and then analyzing that data, iterating on the design of the airplane, and then seeing how that affected the trajectories after the fact. So again, that's an example of taking advantage of the labs here at Tufts and the research that some of the professors are doing, and then turning that into a high school accessible experience. Many of these activities, we actually, while I'm running the whole thing, I had the experts in the field sort of come in and run sub lessons and sub experiences there. One of the big research topics that we have right now is cellular agriculture in the biomedical engineering department, which is basically lab grown meat. And so while we didn't do that as a hands-on activity, we learned about the process, and we got to hear from some of the experts that have been working on that, and actually had a really intellectual debate about sort of the ethics of it as well, which is a huge component of engineering, right? So yes, getting hands-on and doing hands-on projects and getting to experience the engineering design process, but also wrestling with some of the higher level concepts that engineers have to deal with when we are thinking about new products and new designs and going out into the world. Similar to Engineering Design Lab, after about the first week and a half, we transitioned from lots of little projects and skill builders to then thinking about a final project. And so here students were able to tap into any of the topics that we had covered previously that excited them and dive a little bit deeper. And so some of these projects were research projects because they wanted to learn more about how things were happening. One of those was diving deeper into the cellular agriculture and the lab grown meat. Another one, we had done a civil engineering project around bridges. And so they wanted to understand better about the different types of bridges and bridge design and some of the mathematics behind that. And so they were able to sort of do a deeper dive on that, and we're using some simulation. And then students tapping into the other topics that we had discussed in order to create some new products and new ideas around that. So again, students were tapping into their own personal interests and bringing that to these projects. So one student was, I don't know, maybe maybe they had a bad dorm experience, but they wanted to invent a new way to keep a bed at a constant temperature through a cooling system. And so they had actually mocked up and designed this little scale model of a bed and a tubing system that would pump cold water through a bed in order to keep it at a constant temperature. And so they were able to, in a couple days, laser cut and 3D print this bed design, as well as mock up, again, using the pumps that came with those plant watering systems, then hook that up to this bed and actually generate a little system. And as good engineers, we encourage them to actually take some data and prove to us that these ideas could be viable. So they had a little thermometer that they were putting in this and measuring fluctuations in temperature as they were sort of going about it. And so that's and 10 other examples of different types of projects that that students would pursue. Again, tapping into the skills and experiences that they learned along the way. So again, I could probably talk all night, so I'll pause and let the other ones go, and we can answer questions at the end. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your interest in our 2-week residential and commuter coding academy program. This runs from July 9th to 21st, and students will participate in daily coding classes to gain proficiency in Python and other coding languages. Beginners are welcome. The program is open to students of all skill levels. Students with no prior coding experience will join our Coding 101 section, while students with more coding experience can opt for a more advanced section, Coding 201. Students will have specific lectures in each of the sections, but will also have time to collaborate with students of all levels, and they'll join again in the afternoon for tech treks and other activities. Students will be able to take a short placement test before the program starts that'll help them decide which section fits them best. If a student needs to switch into 201 or 101 once the program starts, we can facilitate that as well. Students will have a chance to apply the skills and concepts gained in class with hands-on activities led by Tufts faculty and field experts. Students will have an opportunity to engage with visiting industry experts and take field trips to leading tech companies in the area to see real-world applications of the skills and concepts they're learning. Last year, they traveled to companies such as Google and Amazon, and we expect to visit those companies again and also add on more of the companies that are in this tech hub of Boston. By the end of the project, students will design, create, and pitch their own custom designed final project. Last year, students developed apps, websites, and interactive games. Students also have a chance to earn a Tufts pre-matriculation credit, develop in-demand programming skills, and the ability to successfully market their skills and bond with students from around the world.
So here we are at the point where we get into one of the most important steps in our process, getting ready for the application. And that's assuming you haven't already applied, which I'm sure some of you have. First things first, you'll head to our application landing page to register for your account. You can find that link on all of our program websites at the Apply Now button. Once you've registered, you can log into the system and start your application. You'll put in some basic personal info, family information, and then you'll select your program. To supplement your application, you'll be asked to provide contact information for a recommender and a school official who will upload your transcript. Some programs may require additional application materials, such as lab preferences or a brief personal statement, or a level of experience in the particular content area. As part of your application, your parents will also need to fill out the parent permission form, and your recommender and school official will be prompted to upload your letter of recommendation and your transcript, respectively. Once we've received these materials, we'll return your admissions decision within 10 business days. Upon admission, you'll be asked to submit your deposit and some enrollment forms, followed by your full payment. And just like that, you'll be ready to study at Tufts. Now I will turn to the Q&A section to answer some of your questions. I think we've got a few in here. So, a few things, let's see. So Ethan, I think this one might be for you. For a student interested in architecture, what would be some useful aspects of the engineering investigations program?
Yep, I was just trying to type an answer.
Oh,
But
yeah,
anyway, yeah,
sorry.
no, perfect. No, all good. I'll do it live. So architecture isn't a topic like a subdiscipline of engineering that we address explicitly in the engineering investigations program. There is at Tufts an architectural engineering major. So it is one of the majors that is covered here at Tufts. And we can certainly get you more information on that program if that's something that you are interested in. While we don't do architecture specifically, we do talk about things like urban infrastructure. And so we're looking at the design of the real world and especially from sort of a civil engineering, environmental engineering, sort of those aspects of it. We will touch on that as one of the activities that we do. Because we cover so many activities, it would only be a portion of the overall program, but it is touched on, but not very deep, I would say.
Great, thank you. Next question, will there be roommates for residential students? Claire, do you want to take this one as our residential expert?
Yeah, definitely. So students will be paired with roommates for the most part. Once you're enrolled in the program, we'll ask all students to complete a residential survey where they fill out all of their preferences and other things that we should keep in mind. There is a question on there for singles. We do have a good number of singles just because Tufts has converted a lot of rooms to singles because of COVID. So if you are interested in that, you can select that on that survey. But in general, we'll be pairing students together based off their gender, their program, age, and their preferences. So we'll give you all that information about a week before you come to campus.
Great, thank you. Any specific things you would like to be touched on in the recommendation letter? Great question. I think that the most important thing is that the recommender be able to speak to your sort of like maturity, your ability to study at the college level in terms of your academics, and just, you know, in general, why they think that you would be a strong candidate for Tufts pre-college programs. This next one asks about what pre-matriculation credit means. It actually means, might sound silly, but it means credit that you earn before you matriculate to college. It just means that you earned it before you were actually enrolled in a school. It operates at many schools just the same way that a college credit would operate if you had earned it at another institution. So most institutions do accept them. Some of them do just require a little bit of additional vetting, like they'd want to know where you earned it, who the faculty member was, etc. Is the Coding Academy strictly Python only? What would someone need to know in order to place into Coding 201?
Yes, so we will be teaching Python in our 101 section for sure. And then based off of students' prior experience, we may introduce other languages or develop the skills that students already have. Since, as you may have noticed on your application, if you're opting into 201, we ask you to describe your prior experience, and our instructors and program leads will be developing the curriculum to really fit the needs and experience of the students in the section. So there will be Python definitely, but there's also room for more languages.
Great. So this question asks, what's the percentage of students that are accepted to the program? So this is a little bit tricky to answer because the programs aren't necessarily competitive in that they put students up against each other. Because we have rolling admissions, students are just accepted as they come in within 10 days. And so I think, you know, as long as you have strong grades and a strong recommendation letter, it's really more about getting in before the program fills up and closes. And I know that our engineering programs are starting to fill up pretty quickly. So I would just suggest, you know, getting that in as soon as possible if that's what you're interested in. And similarly, the application deadline is technically May 1st, though programs actually do fill up prior to May 1st frequently. Like I said, these programs are starting to fill already, so it would be a good idea to get that moving quickly. Would this be a good program for high schoolers starting grade 11? Yes, definitely. all of them are. And will there be additional coursework outside of the program? Dr. E and Claire, I'll let you
Yeah, I
Wanna
mean,
speak to that?
I can speak to our EDL and EI, Engineering Design Lab and Engineering Investigations. So the programs run, so the academic side, which is what I'm in charge on, is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So students are in the dorms or commuting and doing their own residential stuff outside of that time. They come to me at 9 a.m. and we start the academics right away. We break for lunch for an hour, but we do run from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and we keep the students busy that entire time. Because we keep the students busy that entire time, they're mentally done by 5 p.m. and need to go do something else. And so we, some students get inspired and want to tinker and want to keep doing X, Y, and Z. The majority do take a break overnight, and then we start again the next day. So we've structured it where everything is achievable within the daytime hours. All of the materials, though, we make available to the students and send along home with them for post programs. So, for instance, for the engineering design lab, where we're actually programming on a robot, as part of the lab fees, you get to keep that robot. So you actually take that robot with you, as well as all of our digital curriculum and materials. And so if there's an aspect of it that we touched on, but you wanted to dive deeper in, you're welcome to explore those concepts later. Similarly, with engineering investigations, we make all of our resources available to the students that have participated. And so there's certainly students that might want to explore one of the subdisciplines more after the fact, after the program is ended on their own.
Great. Thank you. And on that note, I'm seeing a few people ask what students do in their downtime or on evenings and weekends. If you're a residential student, we will offer, our residential staff will be running lots of social activities, both in the evening and on the weekends. In the evening, they're usually kind of smaller activities that are closer to home, like paint nights and things like that. But on the weekends, we've done everything from go to Six Flags to go to the beach, go into Boston, the Harbor Islands, things like that, that have been in past years. And I know our residential staff is already working on an activity calendar as we speak. So I think there should be some pretty exciting stuff in the books.
Sorry, actually, Lauren, one question that people have had in the past is access to sort of Tufts resources as a commuter student. Do you want to talk about that, like the library and things like that?
Yeah. So all of our students, commuter or residential, have access to all Tufts facilities. So the gym, the library, athletic facilities, all of that, as same as any any Tufts student would. So residential students also get 3 meals a day at the dining hall. Commuter students get lunch every day as part of the program. Okay, if a transcript sent does not include grades, will it still count like an unofficial transcript? So yes and no. The transcript needs to be sent by a school official. It can't be sent in by you. However, if you don't have official grades yet, your school official can send an unofficial transcript or report card in lieu of a official one. Do you match roommates with students in the same program? Yes. So we go first by gender, then by age. So we separate, so younger students kind of live with younger students, older students live with older students, and then we go by program. And then within the program, we go by basically your responses to the residential survey that we send out, like, are you a night owl? Are you an early bird? Things like that. So primarily with their program, although the dorm buildings house more than one program. So you would have students from other programs in the same dorm building, but kind of clustered around each student would be their program folks. Can you have a car on campus? Only if you are a commuter. Residential students cannot have cars on campus. This is another great question. Can students have visitors or leave campus on their own? Students can have visitors on campus, but not in the dorms. So no visitors in the dorms. And they may leave campus unaccompanied by an adult if they have a permission form signed. It's called an unsupervised offsite permission form. We will send it to your portal. And when they do that, they need to check in and out with the residential staff, and they need to go in at least pairs. Better is if 3 people. And that's only if there's a permission form signed.
There's a instructor to student ratio question for the coding section, but I'll just mention for EDL and EI, what we do is we also have a number of we call them teaching assistants, teaching fellows, who are undergraduate engineers that we hire to help out with the program. And so typically it'll be one instructor with 4 of those to our 40 engineering students in the engineering high school programs.
Yeah, I would say the average staff to student ratio across the board is like roughly 10 to 1-ish across most of our programs, though some, as we said, have a lot more. And same goes for the residential staff. If you're residential, it's 12 to 1. So it's pretty, you know, quite a few staff to students. Dr. E, do you know this, the gender breakdown in general of the engineering classes?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think. I'm in my office right now. I have my group from last year here of all the
we
students.
Can count.
I'm trying to.
If you know sort of a rough breakdown.
Yeah. It definitely still skews male, but man, we had a lot of strong females and women in the engineering program. So I think it was about a third, I want to say. So 1/3 women, 2/3 men.
Will the engineering investigations program also have daily seminars?
100%. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. We actually overlap at that moment. So we bring them all together, so 40 in each program. We bring all 80 together for those seminars because we invite in some great speakers and we want to make sure everyone has access to them. So yes, correct. Both Engineering Design Lab and Engineering Investigators both have that daily seminar. One of the projects I was very impressed by from the Engineering Design Lab last year was, again, you know, my heart goes out to these projects that really embrace the idea of thinking of others and solving problems for a client. And this was, the student had, I believe, they tap into their personal experiences. So it was like a friend who was blind, and so they wanted to learn Braille in order to be able to better communicate with their friend. And so they actually made this Braille printer. So the idea was that you would type in a word or a phrase into your computer, and then you would insert an index card into the system that would actually go out and punch the holes to actually create the Braille. So it was making Braille flashcards basically, so that they could type in a word, make a flashcard, and then practice Braille by actually creating that little Braille printer. And again, you know, thinking about how do I use a user interface? How do I laser cut the box? How do I use the robotics to go back and forth and up and down and do the precise measurements and things like that, which was pretty exciting.
That's a really cool one. I hadn't heard about that one. So we have a couple more questions for you. How much previous engineering experience is needed for the rising 10th graders for engineering design lab or investigations?
Yep. So there's no engineering experience needed for any of this, right? So we recognize that a lot of high school programs do not have engineering, or if they do, it's in upper levels and things like that. So we do not require prior engineering experience. The point is that we're exposing you to engineering, and we're giving you that engineering experience and what it's like. We will talk math, and we do use sort of concepts, and we'll go quickly. So there is sort of a base minimum. There's nothing specific, but we do look for sort of students who have that sort of mindset a little bit. But again, we want to make it accessible and an option to sort of explore. Someone else asked sort of what's the distribution of students across ages. Usually 10th is a little bit lighter, and 12th, having just graduated, is a little bit lighter, and most students are sort of there in the middle, but there are students across that entire range. And so we've designed the program to satisfy that whole thing.
Great. Thank you. And this one asks, have you ever had situations where a student is struggling with the final project, and how do you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So, and struggling has about 1,000 different definitions, right? So again, because we're doing engineering in a group setting, right? There's all kinds of collaboration and communication skills that we're also working on at the same time, and working on meaning that we could all do better with those. And so sometimes group dynamics plays a part in a student struggling with a final project. And we've done things where, again, where we have tricks of the trade of being good educators. We'll perhaps subdivide a project into 2 parts and split a group in half so that they can each work independently with people that they do get along with, and some social dynamic things like that. Or technically, right? So technically a student may be struggling with something, but that's why we have all the teaching assistants, teaching fellows, as well as other instructors and other expertise here to sort of help people through. But if a student is having a technical issue, then I perhaps would think that should have been caught earlier in the process, right? So during the design, where we have students put up proposals for projects, we then are able to come in and make sure that it's realistic and that it's something that would be doable in the time frame that we're sort of talking about. So we're also very good at sort of scoping and scaling projects like, wow, that's a really great idea that you want to accomplish this whole thing. By the way, we have 2.5 days. So why don't we do this subcomponent to prove the point and make sure that we can get that working? And then that's something that you could extend on your own as an independent project when you get back to school or something like that, right? So we have some ways of redirecting students to make sure that that things are doable.
Thank you. I'll give you a little break and answer some other questions over here that have to do with how diverse our student body is and where students come from. And the answer is very and everywhere. So we have students from across the globe who study in our programs. We have many international students, and we have students from pretty much every geographic area of the country. So very much so, and we're super happy that that is the case. We have so many people from so many different backgrounds, and we think it just makes for a really interesting experience on campus. This is back to you, Dr. E.
Sure.
If someone who wants to explore whether engineering is right for them, is engineering investigations a better choice?
I think so. Probably the blunt answer is yes, because it does gives that breadth of topics. And so we'll touch on lots of different engineering disciplines. And so you'll get a wider exposure to the different bits and pieces, whereas Engineering Design Lab does focus a bit more on robotics and programming and sort of the fields that are adjacent to that, mechanical, some electronics and things like that. That said, engineering is also a bit of a mindset, and we're going to tap into that in both programs, engineering design process and thinking about doing projects and project management and those other skills. So I think you'll get a bit of it from both, but directly, yes, I think engineering investigations would be a better choice.
Great, thank you. And then we have another one. I think, Claire, maybe you want to answer this one. If my student is arriving on his own, do you help with transportation from Boston, from Logan Airport to Tufts?
Yeah, so we do offer transportation from Logan Airport South Station and North Station on arrival and departure day. So we'll have shuttles running from Logan Airport all day long. We also ask students to submit a residential travel information form just so we can have your flight number and also an estimated time of arrival. We'll send the logistics of our shuttles and like what to look for once you land in Logan when we get closer to the program start, but our residential staff will be at Logan with signs and shirts just waiting for your students to arrive.
Super, thank you. I think we already talked about this. How many teachers will be in the engineering class?
Yeah, typically it's one main instructor along with 4 teaching assistants who are undergraduate Tufts students. That said, as I mentioned, there were moments where I would bring in, for engineering investigations, for instance, I would bring in expertise in a subdiscipline. So engineering for the customer, representative from the Tufts Gordon Institute, our engineering management program, came in and talked about his work in human factors and designing a product to fit the customers better. And so in that instance, I was there as one instructor, he was there leading the main activity, and we had our support staff. But typically it's one main sort of professor instructor with some teaching assistants.
Awesome, thank you. And will students be using CAD in the labs?
For engineering, definitely, yes. CAD, which is computer aided design, is a big part of the engineering discipline, and we definitely use that. So as I've mentioned, in both Engineering Design Lab and Engineering Investigations, we'll be doing 3D printing and laser cutting. To do both of those, you have to do some sort of computer aided modeling to model your 3D model or your laser cut design of what you're actually going to create. And we use Onshape as the CAD software in order to do that. So students will get experience with that. And then again, what we often see is that coming back. So, or I'll mention for engineering design lab, the robotics one, we have them design grippers that go on the front of their robot when they're learning about the camera and detecting an object and trying to pick it up. And so they have to do laser cutting CAD design in order to design the arms, and then 3D printing to design these grippers. And then it sort of all comes together in connection with the robotics. So that's an example of where it is. And then what we see often is that CAD coming back into those final projects where they actually are doing that. In engineering investigations last year, one student got excited by the flight activity we were doing, but wanted to build a wind tunnel. So they actually laser cut this whole box structure. We found a fog machine. I literally tapped into my network and a buddy of mine had a fog machine, I brought it in and we were using a vacuum to suck fog through this wind tunnel that he had built. And then he was 3D printing, designing and 3D printing these little airplanes that they were putting in it to watch how that fog would sort of traverse over it. So again, like this was one of those things where student driven project, crazy ideas, we love them and we'll work to make them sort of happen as they're sort of going through it. But no prior knowledge and any of this stuff is needed. So we've designed this stuff to lead students from ground zero up. Of course, some students come in with prior experience, and we're also good at pushing the envelope and saying, I can tell that you know what you're doing. How about you try and do this sort of more advanced version if that's needed? But we definitely support them from the beginning.
So I saw, how soon would the transcript and letter of recommendation have to be sent after submitting your application? Claire, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So we recommend that they submit their transcript and letter recommendation as soon as possible. So we'll be sending out emails and reminders to your recommender and school administrator, but also encourage you to follow up with them. Just because our programs are filling up quickly, the sooner we get your materials, the sooner we can let you know of your admissions decision and move forward in that process. So the official deadline is May 1st, but again, please encourage them to submit as soon as possible.
Thank you. A few people asking about laptop requirements. So we do not have loaner laptops, but I'll let Dr. and Claire talk about what you need for the programs.
Yeah, so I can speak to engineering design lab and engineering investigations. Often students bring their own laptop or device. There's no specific requirement. Windows or Mac are what we see 99.999% of the time. I don't even think I've seen a Linux machine. So either of those, anything fairly recent is good enough and it runs everything. We try to do a lot of web-based software so that it doesn't require download and install. In a few cases, I think we may have had to do that, but very rarely. So a standard laptop sort of works. A couple times students bring Chromebooks, and I believe those work for the majority. It's always just at one or two, so that we've been able to accommodate that in the past. The biggest issue I've seen is iPads. So if you show up with an iPad, it's often very difficult just because we do programming. And when you do programming, you have to do a lot of typing, and the iPad on-screen keyboard is often not good for that. And so often a laptop is a bit better choice than an iPad. That said, we've been able to find workarounds, partners, or other sort of temporary solutions as needed.
Cool. And I will also say that the library has computers that folks can use after hours. So if you want to work on something, in the evenings or what have you, there's, a library as well.
And just to speak quickly to the coding program, laptops are also encouraged, and you should bring them if you have them. If you do not have a laptop, we can pair you up with someone who does. And also similar to engineering, we'd recommend a laptop over an iPad for coding.
Claire, I think there was a question about dietary accommodations in the dining hall.
Yeah, so the dining hall does accommodate like vegetarian and vegan students. We also have a top 9 allergy-free station that will be open all summer long. So if you have any food allergies, you'll also be accommodated. Also, if your program has any box lunches, we have many allergy-free, gluten-free, vegan, and vegetarian options.
I'll just say that Tufts dining halls are awesome. Like they serve really good food, and they have tons of options for across all those dietary concerns. Tough students have all those same requests, and so they're used to accommodating them during the school year, so it extends into the summer.
Can parents attend the final presentations?
Yeah, parents are invited to the closing ceremony. So this typically happens on the last Friday of the program. We'll send out an invitation closer to the program start with the exact location and details, but these typically are from around 11 or 12 until 2 o'clock. And then if you're a residential student, you'll head up to your residential hall to get your bags and finish the checkout process with your parents, or if your parents aren't there, we will finish that checkout process after as well.
Yeah, so each program does its own sort of wrap up individually, because some programs have materials that make more sense in this format or materials in this format, and so it is program specific how it's actually sort of done, but most of them have a sort of culminating event. And yes, we encourage parents to come. Hey, we want to show off what your kids did for you. So yeah, if you're here to pick up your kids, definitely try to come and see the work that they did, and meet their friends and hear and the instructors. You get to meet us too, and hear about the week.
What if my high school counselors are not as responsive as they should be for submitting transcripts? Can we send a copy from our website to fulfill the transcript requirement? Unfortunately, no. Any transcripts do need to come from school officials. We can't accept anything from outside. Can students tour other departments like history or music, or meet with other professors while they're there? Not officially, no. We don't do tours of the other departments. However, a lot of times the students mix together in programs during the residential time, and sometimes you'll actually have staff from the programs coming and hanging out with their programs, and you're more than welcome to go say hi and talk to anybody else. But there is physically also a campus tour that you can go on, so you could see the facilities. You might just not meet everyone involved.
And summer is a little bit quieter here at Tufts, right? So so not every department is fully staffed, or professors take vacation and things like that during the summer. Yeah. So
I will say that our dean, Dean Honor, is a music professor at Tufts. And sometimes when you go into the music building, he's very, very happy to give people an impromptu tour. I've received impromptu tours of the music building, which are really cool because our music building is very cool. So you know, everybody that's on campus, all the faculty members and staff all know who we are. And so they're more than happy to say hello and greet people.
And I'll answer this question about the final project documentation. So this is actually one of my passions and research areas, and everything else is about documentation. And I believe very strongly in capturing all of the work that you do. And so certainly in the engineering programs, we have the students create digital portfolios of the work that they do, and we make sure that they document their work. You hear in this question specifically, we're saying to show off to the parents. That is, of course, one potential audience. But for me, I think one of the things that this program does well is gaining experience and building a portfolio that can be used in the future for other things like future job interviews or college applications or things like that. So one of my goals is to make sure that you do a bunch of cool projects and document it very, very well so that you have those resources available, yes, to show your parents, but also for other things that that you may want to do with that that information later.
Cool. Claire, what percentage of students in any of the programs are granted permission by their parents to go off campus with other students?
I don't have an exact percentage, but I would say maybe like 80% of our students have that permission form signed. Students who have the unsupervised offside permission form are able to leave campus, but they need to be signed in or out. And we also need to know of their destination and require that they go with at least one buddy, maybe two. We do have residential staff that's like all around campus and also in Davis Square. So they're still pretty close by, but majority of students do have this permission slip formed. But if it isn't signed, you'll still have activities on campus, so you won't be like completely alone.
Want to hear about another final project?
I do. I do.
So this student built this, was into board games and playing board games and gaming in general. And so they built this little, again, I say this student, but it's a group of students. A group of students, one student usually is like the passion student in the project and like recruits others to help them with their vision. But anyway, so they built this this little glass, or not glass, but acrylic cube, so that you could see through all sides, and put some dice in it. And so that you could shake it around and it would roll the dice. But on top of it, they actually borrowed one of our AI cameras that had some built-in image processing that could actually detect the number of sides or the number of dots that it saw on the dice. They passed that to a microbit, which was one of the processors that we were using. They wirelessly transmitted that to another microbit plugged into their computer, and then used text to speech on their computer to read it out. So they could actually have this little dice shaker, shake up the dice, and it would wirelessly transmit the value over, and then read out the amount that they were supposed to move on the on the character. Or whatever. So.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That was for engineering design lab, right, Dr. E?
That one was actually engineering investigations. Yeah. So again, like because we're exposing them to a bunch of tech and we're willing to support them in sort of whatever direction they go in, that was actually an engineering investigation. So I see Mandy up here has asked, is EDL more hands-on than EI? And I think they are both very much hands-on. There are certainly some aspects of engineering investigations that is a little bit more conceptual, right? When we were talking about product design and engineering for the customer, that was a little bit more conceptual. When we learned about cellular agriculture, yes, that was we couldn't get into the lab to actually do that stuff, but we make sure there's tons of hands-on. I mean, that's my passion, is hands-on project-based learning. That's when you really learn it, is when you're sort of experiencing it. And so the one that I just described with that dice thing, there's tricks that I used in order to minimize the amount of programming, right? So and that student group had some experienced coders, even though it was engineering investigation and coding is not part of that curriculum explicitly. I got to know who they were and learn that they did have that expertise. So I was able to tap into that and bring that to that project, right? So I also read the room and sort of understand where people are at and tap into their own existing expertise to drive those projects. Yeah. What type of industry pros are heard from in EI? So both EI and EDL, the Engineering Design Lab and Engineering Investigation, share the industry speakers. And the speakers are, we're here in Boston, so we tap into our local network and the types of folks that come over. So again, it changes every year based on availability and interest and a variety of other things, but I can speak specifically to the industry experience that we had come last year. Vecca Robotics is a company that does, they take forklifts and automate them to automate warehouses. And so a Tufts grad actually who works there came back. She's been out for 15 years, and she came back and talked about her experience doing autonomous robots there. We had a grad from Northeastern University who runs a startup called Tatum Robotics that does a sign language hand robot for tactile ASL. And so she came and talked about her process of doing a startup. So, really on the ground, from the ground up, taking an idea out of the lab and turning it into a company. We had someone from Microsoft Cambridge, so the Cambridge office of Microsoft come. She has been doing redesigning different interfaces for coding. So trying to she actually had some of her own carpal tunnel stress syndrome from working too much in her own job, and so she needed to still maintain productivity in coding but design a new, better interface for how to write code more effectively. And so she came in and talked about some of the products that she's been redesigning internally at Microsoft for that. And then the fourth one we had was from Logitech. She's a chemical engineer or a materials engineer, and actually works in their inner earbud group to actually create this new way of molding earbuds for better audio sound quality. So that's an example of like some of the types of folks that we tapped into that came in and spoke.
Thank you. And I think we might have time for one more question, which is, if you're interested in mechanical engineering, would you say EDL or EI?
I would say for mechanical, I would say EDL, right? So because that's robotics, and robotics is really a combo of programming, mechanics, and some electronics. And so you'll see a lot more mechanical throughout those 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you. Like I said, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us at precollege@tufts.edu. We are more than happy to answer all of your questions and put you in touch with folks who are the experts if we can't answer right away. So thank you all for joining and for all of your great questions. As always, if you think of anything after this call, you can always contact us at these different channels. We have lots of them. And follow us on your favorite social media channels to stay up to date with what's new with pre-college programs at Tufts. Thanks to everyone for joining tonight. We're looking forward to hopefully meeting you all on campus or virtually this summer.